Okay, good morning, everyone. This May 19th, 2015 special joint City Council and Redevelopment Agency meeting is called to order. This meeting has been properly noticed and posted in compliance with the open meeting law. These proceedings are being presented live on KCLV Cable Channel 2 and are closed captioned for our hearing impaired viewers. Please note some customers of Cox Communications who do not have a cable box may view this meeting on digital channel 89.5. This special council meeting, as well as all other KCLV programming, may be viewed on the internet at www.lasvegasnevada.gov. The proceedings will be rebroadcast on KCLV Channel 2 and the web Thursday at 8 a.m., Friday at 8 p.m., Sunday at 2 p.m., Monday at 10 p.m. For public comment related items on the agenda, citizen participation and public hearing items, we have available a speaker card which you may complete and submit to the city clerk. Cards are available online in the clerk's office or at the rear of these chambers. If you do not submit a card, it does not prevent you from speaking under public comment, citizen participation, or specified public hearing items. If anyone is present today who has need for hearing impaired equipment, please see our city clerk staff up front. If you parked in the parking garage across the street and did not receive a validation ticket as you entered our chambers, please exit to your right and see the security personnel at the entrance. Before we proceed with the agenda, would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And so here we are, and we are ready to begin.
Mayor, members of the council, we're here this morning to present the fiscal year 16 budget, and our Director of Finance, Vanetta Appleyard, will be giving the lion's share of the presentation, and our Executive Director of Community Development, Jorge Cervantes, will be giving the capital portion of the presentation this morning. And then we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have regarding the budget as we presented it today.
Thank you. And would you like us after, during, or how would you like the questions to come? During the presentation?
It may, whatever's convenient for you. It may be easier to see the whole picture, and then you'll be able to see the changes from tentative to final at the end of the presentation. And then we're happy to respond to any questions that you might have during that period.
Thank you, Ms. Retwell.
Mayor,
morning.
We need to open up for public comment first. Item number 4, public comment.
And is Councilman Barlow on the phone?
Okay, everything here is stapled together, which is why I went from one and didn't look at the rest. Okay, so this is our agenda item 4. Excuse me for a moment, please. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters on the agenda for action. The amount of time any single speaker is allowed may be limited. All comments will be cross-referenced to those specific items. If anyone submitted a speaker card or who wishes to speak under this portion of the agenda, please come to the podium, state your name for the record. We will set the time at 1 minute. Okay, hearing and seeing none, we will move on to agenda item 5. This is public hearing for possible action regarding the fiscal year 2016 City of Las Vegas tentative budget and fiscal year 2016 City of Las Vegas final budget, including the 5-year capital improvement plan. This is a public hearing, which I declare open, and here we go, Ms. Appleyard.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
As we were starting this, Mark Vincent found this great quote about fighting through the Great Recession. Mark Vincent, our Chief Financial Officer, and it talks about, and once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through and how you managed. And I think the other part that is of interest is it says you won't come out the same person. I think that's really important, and it seems appropriate to start our budget hearing with that. As you know, we've weathered the storm. We're not the same city as we were when we started. So this just seemed an appropriate quote. With that being said, when we look toward the future, we always have to be mindful of the past. And throughout the economic downturn, we had 3 key areas of focus in order to help achieve your priorities. And of that was physical integrity. During this period of time, remember, we had to reduce our spending. And in 2011's budget hearing, we came to you and we presented that we had reduced our expenditures by 20%. That was $114 million over a 3-year period of 2009 to 2011. So that was a 20% reduction in expenditures. During this period of time, we were also able to cobble together a fiscal stabilization fund so that we would have some rainy day money in case of problems going forward. You also authorized us to, although we did suspend our 12% ending fund balance reserve to 10%, you immediately enhanced our budget policies by putting an aspirational goal of 20% onto those ending fund balance reserves. So and all the way through this, we maintained our AA bond rating. In the sustainability service area, this gave us a great opportunity to look at ourselves. We embarked upon a fundamental service review. We looked at ourselves. We wanted to see efficiencies. What were we doing well? What do we need to do better? We engaged a citizen survey during this period of time. We reached out to our citizens for them to tell us what did they want us to do? What did they think we were doing well? What did they think we needed to do better? And so we used that information along with the fundamental service review. We looked at our revenue structures. We enhanced and realigned services. We reorganized, and we obviously had to continue to do cuts. But during this process, we've emerged better. Some of those things are happening right now. Our development services process is a result of that fundamental service review. We also have more online services as we invested in technology, and we've reduced our gas emissions. Greater communication has happened with this, with Twitter and Facebook coming in, and bigger transparency, greater transparency of information has also evolved during this period of time. And on the job preservation side, we had to talk to our employees as well. We needed to engage them. So we have an employee engagement that came out of this, and we also wanted them to know through the diversity initiative that they're empowered to do what needs to be done as an employee unit, make suggestions. They know they're out there in the field. We wanted them to help us through this process. So as we did this, we've also put a values conference out where we've gotten continuing training. Not only does it help us in our business life, but it helps us in our personal life. And as our city manager said, we learned from it and we're better for it. What this slide is to show you some major projects that we have accomplished. We accomplished great things despite the Great Recession. This is a very impressive list, as you can tell. Performing Arts Center, Mob Museum, Big League Dreams, we even LED street lights and neighborhood park improvements. And this list is impressive, but it only represents a portion of what we were able to accomplish during this period of time. We thought it would be interesting to see our full-time employee history. So when we started this in FY08, you can see we were looking at, that was our peak of our employees. And in FY08, the blue line represents the public safety. You can see that that's relatively been stable throughout this. Even right now, it's only down about 3% from its peak. The non-public safety, that is down 21% from the peak. So in spite of this, as you know, we've continued to get, in our last citizen survey, we had great results. We had very high results. And we think as we've learned through our journey, we're doing things more efficiently. We've invested in great technology, and we've reorganized and tried to do efficient things. So even though we are not staffed up, we continue to strive for those levels of service. In the area of fiscal responsibility, we wanted to show you how we compare, or how we look in comparison to other entities throughout the state with our bond rating. As you can see, we have an AA rating. It's quite impressive. Moody's, Standard & Poor's and Fitch are the three main rating agencies that look at entities to evaluate their creditworthiness. When they evaluate creditworthiness, they're looking at 4 basic categories. They're looking at financial performance, financial management, our debt position, and they also look at the economics and demographics of the area. Throughout this whole time period, the rating agencies have always complimented us for our quick response and for your continued budget enhancements and your policies that have led us through this Great Recession. This slide is a slide that comes out of our debt management policy. It shows our GO debt as a percentage, as a per capita number. And as you can see, Las Vegas is at the top of the list, which means we have the least amount of debt per capita. And we think that's pretty good that we've been able to maintain our per capita levels at throughout this period. So through this period, our physical trending, we projected FY15, it'll be our 3rd year to finish in the black, which is great. We've also projected our first balanced budget since 2007. You can see we've received our upgrades in our bond rating. We went from an AA negative to AA. The RDA went from a BB negative to a BB. And again, our C-tax growth is the hero here. It's showing that 5.9 over the 43-month average. You've seen this graph before, but basically we always show you our actuals. What we wanted to do was kind of show you, to reiterate the fact that when we filed our budgets in the past, you can see the red line is our or the red bars are our expenditures. And as you can tell, we've been projecting the deficits where our expenditures were exceeding our revenues. So, and FY16 is the first time that this is happening in a positive way. That's right at the very top, but it's definitely a positive black number. Our revenues are exceeding our expenditures in the budget. We wanted to show you how that looks compared to the actuals. So you can see FY13, 14, and 15. We finished in the positive, and again in the budget, that'll be our 4th year where our revenues will exceed. But I think this graph is interesting because it shows that even though we budgeted those expenditures, the departments were doing a great job trying to be conservative. They knew where we were at, and they continued to respond and look for efficiencies and try not to spend to keep us in a good position. So with that being said, our FY16 budget, again, we say this a lot during this presentation, our revenues are in excess of our expenditures. Revenues will be increasing 4.7%. Expenditures, we're going to be increasing a growth rate of 6.4%. We're getting to restore around 62.5 positions. And we're also utilizing $19.3 million in our ending fund balance for FY15 to do some one-time capital and other needs. So we wanted to let you know the changes from tentative to final. So in the original budget for tentative, you approved the 56.5 positions. So we're adding 6 new positions. We were able to identify some additional property tax revenue. That's allowing us these 6 positions. 1 in special events, organizational development, the D&E accreditation policies. So again, now our total restored positions are going to be 62.5. One of the other items that we're doing is we're moving the municipal sports unit out of the general fund. We're putting that into a special revenue fund. That involves 8 full-time people and 8 part-time positions. We're doing this so that we can provide a better transparency, not only internally, but externally as we start executing the municipal sports program going forward. And the transfer of the $19.3 million of our ending fund balance, 11.3 is going to go to the capital program, which Jorge will discuss later on. We're also going to be doing unfunded liabilities of $5 million, and we've got some one-time expenditures for fleet, IT, and Muni Court This is again in preparation for the new employees that are coming on with the cars and the investment we need in technology.
Madam Mayor, is it all right to ask questions as we go
Yes.
along? Just so I'm remembering correctly, how many positions was it that we had to eliminate? You got 62.5 back.
In
from
this
what-
year.
In this year.
We eliminated 615 positions.
615, and totally, not just this year, but in the past years, how many have we restored?
Well, if Vanetta goes back to the slide that shows the FTEs, you can see we're still down 21% in non-public safety
Okay,
positions.
yeah, right, okay.
So we're not back to that full staffing level, but probably won't be for some time because we've supplemented with technology, process reengineering, and a variety of different ways to serve the public differently
So you
than we
might
have
not need
before.
those, all right.
Right.
And the unfunded liabilities are the ones that we have now that every state in the union practically is behind in? Those, that's it, thank you.
Correct.
And we'll be putting 5 million into that.
You have a 25% fund balance policy, and this will get us back to the 25% fund balance. Same thing for many of those one-time expenditures, it's to stabilize some of those funds in municipal court, IT, and fleet, so that we can get back on our replacement cycles the way we ought to be.
Right.
So this is more of a restoration program.
Thank you.
No, thanks. So again, this recaps the positions again for you of the 62 positions. We've got 41 in the general fund, and we've got 21.5 that are going to be in the enterprise and internal service funds. And with our expenditure assumptions, we wanted to show you that in our expenditures, we've got that 6.4%. These are program restorations, and we've also included all of our contractual obligations with our collective bargaining units. Again, the vacancy rate at 3% for our larger departments. And Metro, we increased our funding by 7.2%. With Metro, this allowed them to go back from the supplanting that they were using from the more cops, so that they're no longer supplanting. They're also adding 30 new officers, as well as 47 new civilian support positions. And we're also funding a portion of a helicopter that they need for their search and rescue. So again, it's 62 positions, and we commented again here that we're still down 21% from our peak in the non-public safety area with those restorations. You've seen this pie before, but it's always good to see that salary and benefits is representative of 54%, and the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, our share of their operations, adds another 26% of the pie. One of the things we always like to look at when we look at Metro's budget has 80% of their budget is salary and benefits. So if you take their salary and benefits and you put it with our salary and benefits, then that piece of pie would be 76%. So we know that the general fund really is supporting numerous positions. And our debt service represents 3.4%, and our non-labor is 16%. When we look at this another way, by our functions, we can see that public safety is the lion's share of the general fund with 66%, and then the next one is the general government, which is 11%, and then cultural and rec representing 9%. So it's a different way to look at our expenditures. On the revenue side, we know we're increasing our revenues overall 4.7%. C-tax, again, we've used an estimate of 5.5%, and property tax, we're showing an increase of 4.6%. Now, remember, our assessed value went up 11.3%, but with the abatement, it's at $19.7 million. We know that the residential caps are at 3%, and the non-residential are at 3.2%. License and franchise increased 3.7%, and that fines and charges for services, it's showing a decline there because when you compare from year to year, but that's because municipal sports is moving out of the general fund and going into the special revenue fund. If that hadn't happened, that number would be around 2%, an increase in all the other fees. So we look at this in our general fund revenues. Consolidated tax is 53% of our revenues, and property tax is 18%. And those two represent 70% of our revenues. And remember, we have very little influence on that revenue because it's really state mandated. So, but the 17.3 and the 11.9, those are a little bit more under our control with our fees and our services and licensing. So that being said, this shows you at the bottom, you can see our excess and shortfall. The excess is 1.8 in 14, 9.2 in 15, and 1 million in FY16. We also showed that one-time transfer out to capital of 19.3 in FY15. So it shows our ending fund balance at 19.7%. And then when we add our fiscal stabilization fund, we are definitely at your 20%, at 22%, which is within that 20% aspirational goal. And when we look at FY16, we see the same at 19% general fund balance and 22%. Again, we are keeping with your aspirational goal in our budget policies. And with that, Jorge is going to...
If I might, just before we transfer over, Mr. Cervantes, that municipal, the municipal fund, the sports moving to special revenue, is there hope in the future at some point this will be an enterprise fund where what is collected through sports will pay for itself?
Right now, it is almost paying for itself. We've budgeted about a $400,000 transfer in, but as the fees start going up, I know they're scheduled for some fee increases next fall. We definitely feel that it's going to be able to sustain itself. And having it in the special revenue fund will be able to help us to isolate that better.
Okay.
Mayor,
And-
just a point of clarification
Yes.
too, that the 8 full-time and the 8 part-time don't represent any maintenance. That's all just programming. So
That's good.
when we presented the fee study, we actually built in some of the maintenance costs for the field programming. So this at least sets it up so that we can start to roll in those costs
Good.
appropriately over time. It creates transparency about how the fields are being supported, to what degree financially, how many people, and then what kind of revenue is being captured as a result of that activity.
Excellent. The other question really is more about DSC. Because of the increase in business and growth in that area and applications, are we adding more personnel there? Is that projected? And if so, how many to keep us at our wonderful rates of 5-day turnarounds or whatever you're doing? Or am I ahead of the game here?
No, he's going back to this one was showing that in the enterprise fund, that represents sanitation as well as building and safety with its code enforcement. Plus, we've got the business licensing, that 5.5, and that's adding to also that DSC response time as well. So the 17 positions, I believe that 8 of those are representative of the building and safety.
And hopefully monitored very carefully, because I think one of the things we took such pride in was the fact that we were getting turnaround down to a reasonable number of days and not costing our applicants money, so that we have the right personnel to stay on top of the growing demand for service from us.
Mayor, in the enterprise fund, you not only have the building and safety people, but we also have additional fire position. And then you've got your business licensing folks, and then additional sanitation folks and code enforcement. So I believe that, and I believe the directors will agree with me, that we have adequately addressed in this budget what they see as keeping up with the new demand, because there's a significant increase in volume in our development services area, which is good. It's a good problem to have, right?
Right.
So we're trying to get ahead of that as much as we possibly can, and we'll continue to monitor those performance trends that you've asked to ensure that we're staying ahead of that curve.
Because we really had such an advance over these past year and a half, tending to it in a reasonable length of time, making it very attractive to do business with the city. So just hopefully you're continuing on that, Councilman, please.
Mayor, thank you. And Betsy, I'm glad you said that, because I want the directors to know, especially ones in planning and building and safety, I want to recognize them as being very responsive and paying attention to those trends and what's happening and making the necessary adjustments for the benefit of doing business with the city of Las Vegas. I think that's important and significant to note. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Sorry.
No, and the other thing we wanted to point out too is that building and safety as well as sanitation has made a great investment in this budget cycle for continuing information technology, which is also benefiting the Development Service Center as well with our Infor project.
Great. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Cervantes.
No problem, Mayor. And before we start with the capital budget, just to add to that, kind of where we're going with the development services, doing more of that, how do we implement technology to really make it easier for our customers to service, trying to push more and more online so that somebody from their office, a developer from his office, submit his plans that, instead of having to come down in person. So you'll see those trends where we're staffing up to meet the need of the front counter people. They're really pushing a lot of technology out there to help us be more efficient and do things more efficiently.
And has that budget increased specifically to this area?
It has, Mayor, and in your capital budget, you actually have money appropriated to continue that program going through. As we said, it's a 3-year program. We're in the 2nd year of it, making great strides. By the end of this fiscal year coming up, we'll have building and safety and fire on the new Infor system with electronic plan checking. And so we're making great strides in those areas.
Great. Thank you.
For your fiscal year 16 capital improvement plan, this is a $400 million 5-year plan. And the funding source for this plan really comes from funding sources that have restrictions. We have funding from the Regional Transportation Commission that really is only for roadway projects, regional flood control, that's for drainage type projects, and your enterprise funding source, your parking and sanitation. This makes up the bulk of this budget, but there's also some other funding sources there also. We, as Bonetta pointed out, we reallocated some funding out of the general fund from projects that we close out. As we finish projects, the balance left over, we reprogrammed the next year to do additional projects. And so $11.3 million of that was programmed to do that. That money went toward doing some deferred maintenance to several of our facilities. We've got some parking lots at centers that need to be repaved. We've got some mechanical systems at certain buildings that need to be replaced. We're replacing some fire apparatus equipment, and we're buying some IT-related equipment and software to continue to be more efficient. We're also going to be issuing 2 new recreational bonds. In the next 2 slides, we'll go into a little bit more detail about what those bonds will be used for. We've got a parking bond that you authorized last year that we're just reappropriating the money. That $12 million is for a parking garage somewhere in downtown. The site hasn't been identified yet. We're still looking at the best location to service the need of downtown, but that money's there reappropriated so it can be used for that. And then we've got the Tourist Improvement District that's being appropriated. This is for improvements within the Symphony Park area, various different improvements that are programmed for that area. And then the use of excess funds is part of the $11.3 million that we talked about. When we look at the recreational bonds, what we're proposing is to issue 2 bonds instead of 1. That gives us time to get the projects designed and out the door instead of having it all come at one time and be paying interest on money that's just sitting in the bank. So the first issuance would be a $26 million bond in conjunction with $4.7 million that we have cash on hand from room tax, gives us a total of $30.7 million that we'll be programming under the first tranche. What we're supposed to do with that is to rehabilitate 4 community centers, the Charleston Heights Community Center, Reed Whipple Cultural Center, Doolittle Community Center, and Las Vegas Senior Center. These are older facilities that really need some rehabilitation, bring them up to ADA standards, replace the mechanical systems out there, really bring them up into proper use. We'll be constructing 3 new parks. That's the Washington Las Vegas Wash Park, the Mayfair Park, and Red Rock Park. We have a allocation toward the Modern Museum to help that project move forward over 2 periods, $1 million the first year and $1 million under the second bond issue. And then we're rehabilitating 2 existing parks, the Baker Pool and Park and Baskin Park. These are parks that are older parks that need some rehabilitation, so we're going to be rehabilitating those 2 facilities.
Question, if I might, on that one. Knowing that Reed Whipple is perhaps caught up in the whole discussion about what to do at Cashman Complex, what if that becomes joined together? Is this something, when you're talking about bringing Reed Whipple and doing some major things, is that to make it absolutely functional now for some theater or something? What does the $800,000 do?
What that does, Mayor, is when the building was empty, we had a lot of the mechanical system on the roofs ripped out and stolen. And so it brings it back to where it's usable for whoever goes in there. And so it just allows us to bring the mechanical system back in so that if we do have a tenant for the space, they're able to move. Now, that tenant would most likely have to do whatever improvements they want to do to make it to their particular use, but allows the building to be habitable, because right now, with the mechanical system gone, it's not habitable.
Okay, thank you.
If we look at the second round of bond issuance, we're looking at a $24 million issuance, and what that will pay for, it'll be for the construction of 2 new parks, the Gilmore Cliff Shadow Park and the Harris Marion Park and Trailhead, the second $1 million allocation toward the Modern Museum, and then rehabilitation of 3 existing parks, Bill Blair Park, Charleston Heights Park, and Woofter Park.
Madam Mayor.
Please.
On this list, we had discussed a little bit of movement between Baskin Park and the amount of money they had there. It's not changed on this, but I'm assuming you're going to change it.
What we did, Councilwoman, is we have Baskin Park funded under the first round. If you
Yes.
recall, last year we funded Dexter Park and Baskin Park and split the money between both of them. When we went out to meet with the community to see what they want to see at those parks, there wasn't enough money to do both of them, so we grabbed the Baskin money and put it all toward Dexter so we could build what the desire was out there. And then we're funding the improvements we had previously identified at Baskin under this tranche here. And so there's the ability to do Dexter this year we're working on, and then we'll start working on the improvements on Baskin Park. What we did move around, Councilwoman, was that we switched out Cragen Park for Bill Blair to be able to do that, and brought up Woofter Park. And it's also the changes that we did that we discussed last week.
But those changes aren't on this, because I thought we were having Bill Breer and Woofter ahead of Baskin. But I'll talk with you later.
We can do that, certainly, Councilwoman, we can move around the
It was
priorities.
the same
and do-
amount
yeah.
of money, I just...
That's no problem. Yeah, we can change the priorities around. That's not an issue.
Jorge?
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Barlow?
Jorge, just remind me in regards to Ed Fountain and the expansion of the fields, the football as well as the soccer. What category did they fall under, did the park fall under?
As you recall, we put a list together of all the projects that were unfunded, all the recreational type projects. Certainly, the need was greater than the funding source available. We still have about $50 million of unfunded projects. It is on that list, Councilman. As additional funding opportunities come up through different grants, through residential construction tax, we'll be looking at those funding sources to try to get those projects that are still under the unfunded list moving forward. So we continue to look for opportunities to fund those, whether it's NIPLMA or some other sources. We'll continue to look for money for those.
Thank you.
So with that being said, our total budget that we're going to be filing for final is a $1.2 billion budget across all funds. Our general fund is the $521 million, and the capital program is the $400 million that Jorge discussed. For the redevelopment agency, this budget is basically the same that we presented in tentative. The only change that happened was that in the program expenses for FY15, we were estimating some additional expenditures. And so that's reflective there, but FY16 is basically the same. You can see the excess over the short versus shortfall. In FY15, they're finishing positive, and FY16, they're also finishing positive. Tax increment grew 12% between FY14 and FY15, and we're anticipating an 8% growth in that tax increment in FY16. The expenditure is growing about 7%, but you can see it's matching the revenues, and we're ending with an ending fund balance of $20.3 million.
So actually, this is, Mayor Pro Tem had just advised me, this is agenda item 6.
True.
So public hearing and for possible action regarding fiscal year 2016 City of Las Vegas Redevelopment Agency tentative budget fiscal year 2016 City of Las Vegas Redevelopment Agency final budget. A public hearing also, which is open, and please continue. Thanks. Good catch.
Thank you, Mayor.
Good.
Thank you. So again, we'll be filing a budget with a positive excess revenues over expenditures for the RDA. With that being said, the key takeaways for our budget, again, this is the first time we're filing a budget since 2007 in the black. We have achieved our revenue goals. We are exceeding our expenditures by in that 2 to 3%, 2 to 5% range. We've improved our bond rating both in the city and in the RDA. We've restored the 40 hours back to the CEA, and we're trying to stabilize our services by adding those positions back. We've renewed the capital investment going forward, and we've made significant strides and results in your priority areas.
Wonderful.
Our next steps, we filed the budget June 1st with the Department of Taxation. It's the detailed budget. And then the 5-year capital improvement plan is due to the Department of Taxation on August 1st. So those are our next steps. And we wanted to take this opportunity to thank the finance staff for putting the budget together, as well as all of the departments and the directors. As you know, a budget cycle is pretty hard to go through. This year, because of our revenue situation, we felt a little bit better, but everybody took a good hard look at what they really, really needed, and we want to thank everybody for all their efforts in this regard, and thank you for your support as we went through this.
I'm sure we all concur in that gratitude to the staff and the hard work that's gone into this, Mr. Vincent, everybody that's been working on this. And it is a public hearing, so let's hear from the public first. Anybody who wishes to comment, then we'll go to council. And no, nobody's hearing, so we will close the public hearing. And any comments coming from council, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Council, all right, Councilman Beers and Councilman, I looked at Councilman Barlow and I said Councilman Beers. So let's go with the mouth rather than my eyes. Councilman Beers first, then you, Councilman Barlow.
His head is shiny just as mine is.
Yes,
Mayor,
it
so-
is, see?
And everybody starts with B, so. Thank you, Your Honor. The parking bonds authorized at $12 million. We have a agenda item that was rolled from the last regular city council agenda onto tomorrow's agenda. And there've been a couple different numbers floating around. Could we get some clarification on what the thought process is?
The $12 million that was referenced by Jorge was the bonds that we approved last year, so they're not part of the TID. So it's a separate set of bonds. That's why it's $12 million. The bonds in the TID that we're going to be bringing to council tomorrow, we have an agenda item that's a resolution for IRS purposes. We put a not to exceed amount of the $45 million, and included in that, we are anticipating about $25 million of those bond proceeds to go to a parking structure that will be located in Symphony Park, in the TID area. So that's the
Which
difference
was the
between the two
original-
bonds.
Yeah, which was the original discussion that we had a couple of months ago, was $25 million. And so the number we saw in the resolution, which we'll discuss tomorrow, got to sneak this in before Brad stops me, is a not to exceed amount. We'll get to that. So is that in the budget in any way? Is the TID in the budget, and is it going to be a project of the city or of the redevelopment agency?
Councilman, it is as part of the capital, 5-year capital plan. The appropriation of that is in there at a $45 million level, and so that'll be used for not only the parking structure, but other infrastructure needs we may have within Symphony Park. So it is part of the 5-year master plan.
And let me just say, for clarification, the council will make, all we're doing now is authorizing in the capital improvement plan the $45 million number. That's if you choose to go to $45 million in the bond issuance. If you chose to just do the parking garage, then it would be whatever we're estimating the parking garage to be. If you decided that we were going to just do some infrastructure, then it would just be the infrastructure. If you wanted to do both, then we would come back to you with a figure that would go out to the market to sell the bonds to support any or all of those proposals. So today is just to create the opportunity for that to happen without us having to augment during the middle of the year when you consider that bond. We try not to do that if we can avoid it. So this creates the authorization, but not the bonding action or really the actual expense of the parking garage. So this is preliminary to all those other decisions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your
Continue,
Honor.
please.
So, or is it true, in other words, that there's both a revenue item for the bond proceeds and an expense item, but we don't know yet what that's going to be? It's set right now at the maximum not to exceed dollar figure? And circumstances are going to tell us what the revenue is from the TID, which tells us how much we can borrow?
Yes.
Okay. I will be voting in favor of the budget, although there are pieces of it, such as the parking garage and the 5-year plan, that I disagree with. But the overall capital plan, I think, is a good one.
Thank you very much. Councilman Barlow? Oh, you defer to Councilman?
Yeah, this was just so
Okay.
I can get clear in my mind. As I understand it, the revenue, the TID action is a smart move because you cannot do much after sales and activity action starts in Symphony Park. You can't just create a TID because it's all on anticipated revenue. So if we have that, even though we're not going to spend 45, we know we need 25 for the garage. And so the question is by authorizing and by locking it in, as sales grow, as revenues grow to support additional bonds, then you could do that. Isn't that basically what we're doing?
Actually, I think this conversation probably is better suited for tomorrow.
Okay.
But as far as your budget goes, what we are proposing is that we put in what we think the revenue could support in a bond, period. It isn't making a decision about the sizing of the bond, and it's actually not the work that we would do with our financial advisors and the institutional bond buyers to figure out exactly what revenue levels would be supported through that bond issuance.
All right.
There are a lot of steps after this. Does that help answer that?
Yeah, it does. Because everybody's jumpy about this. It's being written about, and there's all kinds of opinions and things that kind of, I cannot tell the truth and the reliability of the opinions that are being circulated, but it appears to me that we're okay. And this is kind of part of it. So if you want to take it up tomorrow, that's better. Be happy with me. But I like Councilman Beers. There's not everything perfect in any budget. I mean, we all have our opinions. I can tell you this much in the budget, that I really like what you're doing with the parks. The underserved area of town in the central core in wards 1, 3, and 5, and specifically east to Ward 3. These parks additions and rehabilitations are something the public and the people just really need, and it makes me feel good. Thank you. All right, I'm for it. Sorry, Councilman Barlow surrendered his time for me. I appreciate that, Ricky.
But he didn't give it up entirely. I
No,
know he'll
no,
make
no.
the comment. Councilman Barlow?
It's really more so a question for Betsy in regards to the question of the expansion on the council floor as far as FTEs, full-time employees. I didn't see that in this portion of the budget, and is this was it left out? Is it a part of another component? I'm just trying to get a level of understanding as to where we are with that.
Actually, what we're recommending that we do is that we take the 3 neighborhood planner positions and we reassign them to the council wards that have indicated a need, 1, 3, and 5. So there would be no net new positions that would be required to accomplish that additional support in those wards. We have some work that we need to do to, make that happen, should that be the direction that you all go. If you want to discuss further expansion, creating new positions, I do have some data here that I'm happy to show that shows a series of options. Our recommendation is to reprogram the neighborhood planners into the council offices.
And that's fine, but I would like to actually see all of the options.
Sure.
Only because serving under the council may not be something that the planners would choose to do in relation to where they are currently under the CEA. And so I would be concerned for those that would choose not to participate and what would happen to those positions. So I'm not trying to create an opportunity where someone is laid off, but knowing that we have the ability to expand specifically where those needs exist on the council floor.
I don't know if they can switch over to the overhead. That'd be helpful. So we're probably going to have to zoom in here. I'm going to just slide this over here so that's not in the way. You can basically see that if we take the neighborhood planners, and they're actually really not called neighborhood planners anymore, but for
Are you in option
change.
1?
I'm in option 1, which is the blue box, that shows you that there would be a 0 impact to the budget. We would change the reporting relationship. move the cubicles closer to your offices, and work out the reporting relationship. We could leave those individuals in the union. Obviously, we would need to work through all of those union considerations. The easiest thing is to leave them in their classified positions until we know what we need to do, and then we work through that. If the desire was to move more towards an appointed position, then we'd have to work through some processes with the union on that, and those represented employees. So we could do that, but the simplest approach would be to just reassign them to work in your offices. And so that's what option one is. That's what we would recommend. You could forego that option. You could create 3 new special assistants. That's option number 2, the orange box, or kind of melon color box. That has a $300,000 impact to the general fund budget. Option 3 would be to blend option 1 and option 2, which would be to reprogram the neighborhood planners and their assignments, as well as adding 4 new positions so that every single council office, including the mayor, would have a new position added. You can see that that's a $400,000 impact to the general fund budget. And if you decided to leave the neighborhood planners intact without moving them, leaving them in administrative services to be redeployed or whatever we needed to do to utilize those resources, then you would have a $700,000 impact to the general fund budget by adding 7 positions so that everybody would go up by 1 position. What we were anticipating is that we pursue option 1, see how the workload is managed, see if that solution works, and adapt accordingly throughout the year. And then if need be, we needed to have additional assistance put into 2, 4, and 6, then we would put assistance into 2, 4, and 6 at a later date, possibly in a future budget as workload demands. The mayor has indicated at this point she does not want to have an additional person in her office. And that's kind of been the sense that I've received from 2, 4, and 6.
Excuse me if I might, Ms. Fretwell. As I recall, in the budget, though, you do have a second person coming in special events.
Yes,
which would, in fact, help all of us.
Absolutely.
If, in fact,
We're
that's a new position.
We're doing a couple of things on the special events front that are probably going to help every one of your offices. I know that this has been a significant issue for Councilman Coffin and Councilman Anthony. During the recession, we had to mothball our second mobile stage. And what's happened is that, and simultaneously, we also had a reduction in force in the technical production unit as a part of cultural affairs. So we're really only able to staff and run 1 stage, even though we had 2. So in this budget, we're restoring the second stage, the 3 technical support individuals that would be needed to support it, and adding a special events coordinator to work with Christy in administrative services so that we can actually put that stage into full use and help each of you in the deployment of special events out in the community. We do know from prior community survey results that special events do help us build community, build commitment, volunteerism, outreach, engagement, etc. So we feel like it's a really smart investment, a smart restoration right now. And so what we were hoping is that in combination with restoring a lot of the special events support activities, etc., redeploying or reassigning the neighborhood planners to basically become ward specific in the older wards, no offense, but 1, 3, and 5,
mature.
that we would be able to handle the workload issues, that we would be able to handle the special events demands that are citywide, quite frankly, and do it with about a $400,000 impact on the budget when you build in special events and the redeployment of the neighborhood planners.
And
So
I would
that was our
add, too, if I
recommendation.
might, that while the council members are part-time positions, their offices are full-time positions.
Yes.
And so that, just for the viewing public to understand how the council works. The mayor's office is full-time regardless, but the council persons are part-time, but their office staff is full-time.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're actually full-time, just being clear.
I am full-time.
Sorry, okay.
That's all right.
Just making sure
It's all right.
everybody understood that.
Okay. I did. Any other comments? If not, I'll ask for a motion.
So,
Oh, wait. Yep, you're
oh, I'm
first.
sorry.
You'll be next.
So with that, I mean, is this something that we need to direct you today in relation to what we need, what our needs are specifically?
If you don't prefer option 1 and you prefer 2, 3, or 4, you need to direct us to include that in the budget today. If you're comfortable with option 1 in combination with the special events plus op, then you don't need to do anything in addition to what we've presented to you today because it's included in that budget.
Right, but understand my concern, and this is just me thinking on behalf of the planners, and they may be thinking differently. With those individuals that work for the council offices, they work at the discretion of the mayor and council members. So if we choose to leave tomorrow, our staff is gone. And so I would hate to basically pull someone from a position right now where they're protected by the union, and now they're in a vulnerable position underneath an elected. So I'm just trying to figure out how are we going to, protect them as they're protected now. So if.
You leave
so
them
if-
as you
so-
leave them in their current classification, but we just reassign them to work for you. So you will have, as you deploy your workforce in working with Ted and the administrative services folks that help you manage
Right.
your staff, they would have to follow the union rules. So if they work overtime, they get paid for overtime.
And that's another concern that I have in relation to that, because we work throughout the weekend. And so now it's going to put more labor on my staff and I, because we now have to watch out for this overtime, whereas I don't have to watch out for that now. I can just basically deploy my staff accordingly to the workload of what we have, and I don't have to worry about the issue of overtime or who has worked more hours and who has not. And so for me, that's an additional piece of work that I don't care to have. And so if that's going to be the case, then I'm not going with option number 1. I would rather go with option number 2, as far as being able to pull someone in that I can work according to the workload that I need to take place in my office versus worrying about overtime, because I don't have to worry about that today, because my staff know they work according to the plan in which I lay out on behalf of the residents' needs of Ward 5. So if I have to choose today, I'm not choosing option 1. I'm choosing option 2.
It's completely up to council. You know that we have a $1 million positive number in this budget, the first time we've had in 7 years. If you want to choose to spend $300,000 on 3 additional positions, that's completely up to you. That's why we laid out these 4 options. We were trying to develop one that we felt like we could work through.
Right.
And one that had
But
zero impact on the final budget.
Keeping in mind that trying to work through option number 1 creates a wave for folks such as myself and my colleagues who are choosing to bring in an additional body as well. So it's not working out well for us, although it may be working out well for you. And so the win-win for me is to be able to have a seamless staff that I know when I deploy them, I'm not worrying about overtime, because that's an impact to the general fund as well.
If what you would like for us to do is do option 1 and transition the neighborhood planners to a point of employees, we will do that. What we were simply trying to do is get the bodies allocated and then work through those issues with the union and the employees. Now, if you choose not to do that, we'll have to reevaluate the neighborhood planner positions, period. If we go with option 3, we'll have time to figure that out. Because really, if we leave the neighborhood planners and we add 3, in effect, we're getting option 3, okay? But what's been indicated to me is that we don't really have tremendous amount of use for those 3 neighborhood planners in any of the wards but 1, 3, and 5. So then that comes back to a workload issue of how much of that time, staff time, do we really need in the organization, and how do we move forward?
And that doesn't work out well for me.
So I'm happy to do whatever the council would like to do as it relates to your staffing. I just want to make sure that you understand the financial impact.
No,
And I hear what you're saying, Councilman.
I totally get it, but
Yeah.
even looking at this impact, I mean, there's ways, Betsy, and we've had this conversation as well, as far as shifting some of the capital improvement that we have laid out, or some other areas that we can basically take pieces from, not necessarily eliminating the entire budget, but being able to take, 50,000, 100,000 from different areas in order to make up this difference as well, which basically spreads it across the budget versus just doing an all-out elimination. And so, for that, I see option number one being cumbersome for me in my office.
I just wondered, you're saying you're going to try and see if you can work this out with the union and with the people involved. Is there a way that we could be utilizing the individuals while you see if you can work it out? And if we don't work it out, then we could go to another option?
But this has to be signed by June 1st.
Yeah, it has to be in the budget by June 1st, yeah.
Well, the issue is that we can reassign the staff tomorrow if that's what we want to do. They're currently represented, and we're mindful of the impacts of that, which would mean that they're obligated to work a 40-hour work week on a schedule. And there's a variety of things that we can do in working with the union and with those individuals to change schedules to adapt to weekend work the way you need it, should that be your desire. What we don't want to do is just make a blanket statement and say, this is how we're going to schedule these individuals, because quite frankly, we need to talk to each of you about how you plan to use them if they remain union employees, and deal with the budget impacts if there are overtime considerations and things of that nature.
It might be a little hard too, because you might have people on your staff that are working far more hours because, they're working weekends and everything, with somebody who's with the union who doesn't do that unless they get overtime money for it. I understand what he's saying there. I'm just saying, we could put a tentative thing in the budget. I understand the way you favor, I think, is option one, even though it's up to us. And I'm saying, could we give option one a try, putting a tentative amount in the budget if we need to go the other way? Or should we just say, no, that's it, and add 3 new people?
Well, and it comes back to what you prefer. The bottom line is that you've got 3 individuals that are currently assigned to 6 of you. So our recommendation was take those 3 and assign them to 3. If that doesn't work for you, then add the 3 positions today and tell us to hire you new appointed people.
Are you saying,
and then we'll go forward.
Are you saying that during the fiscal year, you do not have reserves? If in fact the option was try it for one, not to impact the budget. If it doesn't work, is that a fait accompli that you cannot add these positions once we are into the year?
No, actually, Mayor, we can do that. We can bring additional positions back later.
Excuse me, I'm going to have you, because that,
Sure.
I think this is, if you'll wait one second.
Sure.
Okay.
Could you, what my question was, that if in fact, in order not to impact the budget and to continue what we've been doing and trying to work in a conservative manner, that option one, that if in fact you're 3 months into the opportunity to use option one, you find out it's not working, you can't reschedule on the 40-hour work week, the union personnel, and that your own staff, you still find you need somebody full-time 7 days a week, can you augment the budget and hire those people after a month or two?
That's exactly what we would have to do. We would have to augment the budget. Well, so we would have to grow the budget, which means we need to make sure that we have the revenue to grow the budget.
Right.
Or spend down our fund balance, which is
So that's
a different way of looking at what Councilman Barlow said about using capital. We don't typically use capital for operating costs.
Right.
That's in your budget policies.
Because how can he
You've told
plan
us
his
don't do that.
budget? You can't
But-
plan the capital.
But you could choose to spend more of your fund balance. We're mindful of all the budget policies that you've set, that you want that 20% aspirational goal, that you want us to make sure that capital is used for one-time expenses, those kinds of things. So really, it comes down to a budget prioritization. Do you want to add 3 positions now? Do you want to try option one? If it doesn't work, we'll try and figure something else out. If you want to forego option one, we'll just have to work through that, and then you would pick option 2, 3, or 4 and tell me which one you want. And just recognize that it will drop your in-fund balance down if you go with 2, 3, or 4. Your budget will not have $1.1 million.
Could I just ask one question here at this point?
Black.
Yes.
It'll drop that.
Don't we
Thank
have a
you. Well,
two?
let Councilwoman go first, please, then
Just one
Councilman.
question. Don't we have a 2.7% surplus in the budget that could cover that?
You have, in the budget we presented, you have a $1 million surplus that balances your budget. $1 million out of a $500 million budget.
Well, I'll share with you what my needs are. My needs are option number 2. Thank you.
Councilman Coffin?
I am. Thank you so much for letting me go ahead. That was an important question in my mind.
Okay. I favor option 1, but I understand that everybody has different needs. For example, the population differences require that it would be months before I could fill a position under options 2 and 3 and 4. We would have to interview like we've done before, just the other time, and that's been almost 4 years. So I could use right now the help, the undivided attention of the planner who is theoretically assigned to my office, because that really, they are being pulled and tugged in 6 different directions. And I think if I got the 38 or 40 hours, I'd be tickled pink, because he's already trained up into the office procedures and this kind of thing that we do. This would be good, and it wouldn't hit the budget. If we went to option 2, I don't have a hard feeling against it, except that I do know that I wouldn't be able to fill the position for a while, and I doubt any of them would be full. So your impact in your first year is not going to be $301,000. You're going to have a lot of salary savings. The positions would stay vacant for a while, unless everybody's got some person ready to move in if we did this. I don't, so let's just say that the cost is overstated in the first fiscal year. So I know what I would be willing to do, but I think that there must be, since there is no one-size-fits-all, your option 1 is the easiest, and it does accomplish most of what we want. But it is true what Councilman Barlow says, his management style is a little different. But my people are always on tap. Even my planner is available on Saturday or Sunday with emails and phone calls and stuff like that. So I know he's going overtime in a sense, but he never asks for it. And I suppose I should say he might find a way to compensate. He does take a day off every now and then.
We do have ways to accommodate
Yeah.
time worked off the shift under the contract, and
Yeah.
I presume that's what Rob is doing.
And so
we'll make sure of that.
he is treating himself fairly, because that's important. We don't want to have talked about this today and find out that he's logging overtime and not being paid for it. But I don't mind taking that risk today in the public discussion, because this is what we talk about publicly. We can't talk about this privately. So I could go either way, but I prefer 1 only because I need somebody now who already knows what I'm doing. And if it suits Councilman and Councilwoman to do differently, assuming wards 2, 4, and 6 agree, then I wouldn't care if we went to option 2. But I would probably informally stay just where I am, if you know what I mean. Am I permitted to do that?
Well, I laid out option 1, 2, 3, and 4, well, actually, a whole host of us worked on this chart to try and simplify it. But the bottom line is if there's only need for 1, you could add 1 to Councilman Barlow's ward.
Yeah.
And then it's a $100,000 impact, or 2, or 3, or 5, or 7. It really depends on what you feel your need is and what you feel our budget can handle in your
Well,
wards.
if I was guaranteed that that planner individual would be solely dedicated to Ward 3 and would not be called by anybody in the CMO and other places or other wards, then I could live with that. And Councilman Barlow, Councilwoman Tarkanian, they should be able to fill their own needs. Then in 6 months or 8 months or a year, then I say to you, oh, it isn't working. I need more. Then we can confront that again with a mid-year adjustment theoretically, because I think the revenue is going to be greater. And so I guess I'm okay. I mean, I've stated my position. you know. they
Okay,
wanna
so
go
it
along with that.
sounds like moving this forward. The Councilman Barlow would like the added personnel. Councilwoman, I thought she said she's ready to try one, see how it goes, and Councilman Coffin, if he could be guaranteed 100% of his person, is where we are. So how do you vote that? I mean, is that just,
I'll make
or
the motion.
did
I'll
I
make the
misquote you? You're not on again.
You would add one position, an EL1 for Ward 5 as a part of the motion.
And
It's
it
that simple.
doesn't mean that coming back, whether it's in 2 months, 6 months, Councilwoman said, this isn't working, I need whatever, that you at least have heard it, so you have a sense of looking into the budget where you possibly could find that.
Could I have a little time to think this over today? Do we have to do it right this minute? Could we just set aside the funds if they're needed in the budget? You've got the funds there, could they just be tentative there?
Well, what we would do is we would have to actually create the positions in the budget, so you're authorizing the expense, but you don't have to fill it. So you would create 2 EL1s
Okay, and that
in
gives
the
us-
council offices.
Because I don't want to cause
And
an
then we would deal with it
addition,
later.
I don't want to cause an additional expense if it's not needed, but I think what I have to do is thoroughly look at where our needs are, where they lie, abilities evolved, and things like that.
So does that help you?
I know
or
I need
hinder
help,
you?
but
Listen, this is a council discretion discussion. We've laid out what we need for the operational budget. We appreciate your support for that. I think everybody's pretty comfortable based on the questions with that. This council budget stuff, I mean, it's really particular to your wards. And it's how far you want to go dipping into that $1 million that we have set aside to balance the budget by adding positions in the mayor and
Okay.
council's line. That's all.
So what I'm hearing is the
That's how you
mayor
put it in the
and 2, 4, and 6 do not need extra personnel.
There's been no
Councilman-
indication that there is a
Right.
need for a position right now.
Wherever they are.
At this point.
At this point.
Right.
Councilman Coffin has said he would like to reassign planning to his office, who already knows, but obviously always has the option to come back if it doesn't work. Councilman Barlow definitely wants to augment the budget with whatever you're putting in there, so he can have, in addition to the person who's assigned in planning that's responsible to his office, another person.
Councilman Barlow.
Barlow, right. Councilman Barlow will retain in planning the person assigned to him, but additionally will have a new person
Well,
added.
we need to talk about that because we need to really assess the workload about what that person is doing versus what they would be doing if there was another person added to each of those offices. Because right now, we need to just work through that issue. I believe we need to look at it administratively because we wouldn't be reassigning them in option 1. So we would work with administrative
Okay, I've
services
got
to
an
figure out what
idea.
they would be doing if,
I have an idea, if I may,
Okay.
just to move the item further.
Okay.
That mayor's office, 2, 4, and 6, and at this point, Ward 3, the budget as planned is fine. You will continue conversations with Councilwoman, Councilman Barlow to make that so that by June, we know where you are with that. So we can make a motion to accept the budget.
If you accept the
that.
budget as it is, with no other positions, we will continue to try and deal with addressing the issues that we've talked about today. But if you add the positions, if you take some version of option 3, whether it's 1 position, 2 positions, or 3 positions, we will drop your fund balance by $300,000. We will augment those 3 budgets with $100,000 in salary, and they will be able to bring people back into their budgets to be able to be hired. All of those people would come back to you for approval at the time of hire, but the positions and the funding would be authorized today. If you don't want to do that and you want us to evaluate, as Councilman Coffin said, sometime toward the end of the year, figure out how the revenues are coming in, bring back positions at that time after we've had time to explore the neighborhood planner transition, whether it worked or not, we could do that then.
But you just said a way that was very clean and concise, and that was put the money for the positions in the budget And if they're used, and if not, then they revert back to,
That's option 2.
yeah, that's what you
You
said to
just
do.
say we adopt
But
the
option
budget with
two
option
doesn't
2 on the
mean-
chart.
Yeah, you put that in the budget,
That's
but
all we
option
need to
2
do.
doesn't mean that the person such as I might not say, okay, I can go ahead with the planner, and then that money reverts back to the budget.
Right, it would go unallocated.
That's right, and you just have it in your ending budget, okay.
Okay, Councilman.
Thank you,
Thank
Mayor,
you.
very much. Director Appleyard, you don't need to zip back to this slide, but this is the slide that is the general fund revenue and expenditure actuals, as opposed to the general fund revenue and expenditure budgeted. And that slide is the most telling to me, and I'll tell you why, Mayor and council members and the public and the staff that's here. This is the hard work of every city employee in this organization to make this happen this way, to bring us to where we needed to be over these years. And if you look at those years, and I know Councilman Beers, can appreciate this, especially in fiscal year 10 and 12, we spent more money than was generated in revenue. And I think that's a telling sign that Ms. Fretwell, your staff at every level did their best job they possibly could to keep us where we needed to be. I've said this before, Ms. Fretwell, you and your team have guided us through the worst recession in time, and in a very successful manner. And it wasn't just you and your executive team, it was every employee in this city. The guy mowing the lawn at the park, same thing. I mean, everybody did their best and did their part to make this happen. And I just want to commend all of the directors and all of your staffs as well for the great job they've done. With that, Mayor, I'm prepared to make a motion, and I would move on agenda item number 5 that we adopt fiscal year 2016 City of Las Vegas final budget, including the 5-year capital improvement plan as presented by Director Appleyard. That's my motion on agenda item 5, Mayor.
So you're not doing
Question.
anything with what we're talking about?
Question on
Oh,
the,
wonderful.
question on the motion, Mayor.
Yes, please.
One of the beautiful things about where we are today, Betsy, is the fact that everyone throughout this entire organization had to cut back. And we had to do a lot more with less. And as I look back through this budget and see how far we've come and the impacts that staff have made in order to get us to this point, is commendable. But as we pull back in and try to beef back up across the organization, one thing that we can't forget about is the fact that we have a responsibility across the organization to make sure that there's equitability in all areas. And I can assure you, and the data has shown the impact of wards 1, 3, and 5, and how great of a need it is for us to manage the wards that we have, because there's so much more work to do, and our staff can't handle it all. There's a lot of things that are falling through the cracks. Now, one thing I can't tell you is how many people you should have in your department if in fact you're demonstrating a need that you don't have enough staff to address that need. I'm sharing with you, just as my colleagues have shared with you, that there's a need in our offices in order to manage the wards in which we represent. Now, we've done the best that we can, and we're in a position now to expand a little bit in order to balance out the workload. Now, if there's other wards that don't have that much of an impact, I can't regulate or even speak against them wanting or not wanting an employee to help in their ward. I can only advocate on behalf of the need that exists in my ward. And so I'm sharing with you, just as I'm sharing with my colleagues, that I need an additional body because my staff is at a very pivotal breaking point as it relates to workload. And so I'm requesting that I receive an additional body, option number 2, for my ward. And I believe that it's only fair as we increase additional bodies across this organization. And I don't believe that I'm asking for anything beyond what is necessary and what is right.
Mayor?
So I can't support this budget moving forward unless I have a body. I need a body. Thank you.
Councilman Coffin.
I didn't hear the motion exactly, and so I can't tell if it totally excludes what Councilman Barlow wants to do. I've asked my assistant, Susan, to bring down to me today, right now, the data that prompted all of this to start this discussion, because here we are talking about $300,000 and a $600 million general fund budget. So you wonder, what's the deal? You know, we're spending more time on that stuff. But there's a reason. I started working on it 2 years ago when I asked for and received this additional allocation of part-time from the planners for wards 1, 3, and 5, and that was because of the workload as evidenced by various ways. We went and looked and saw all the stuff we were doing, and that was just in relation to wards 2, 4, and 6. It wasn't meant to denigrate the work of 2, 4, and 6. There's just a lot more to do downtown and in the earlier established wards. So then we just got new data, and that was last month, provided by the city manager office, which showed customer response management numbers, which showed a remarkable increase in the amount of workload for wards 1, 3, and 5, with actually 3 being the hardest working in terms of the number of complaints, in terms of the number of requests for service. All this is objective data. So to a spectator who's wondering what we're doing, what we're talking about, we're actually discussing spending money on things that are necessary. And it is a question of data to back it up. We have the data. We didn't put it in the record today, but I'm going to have it put in the record for this day as soon as it arrives, because it does show, and I think it's coming, shows, for example, that customer service requests by ward, last year, Ward 1, 5,544. Ward 2, 1,901. Ward 3, 11,985. Ward 4, 2,065. Ward 5, 5,016. Ward 6, 1,557. So the data is there, and every one of the new wards has its own set of problems that are just different than ours. And maybe it doesn't require the same sort of input of data that would give a bigger number to them. But we all think I'll know anecdotally, you know, where the dirty work is done, and it is in the old parts of town that need a hell of a lot of work keeping them up. So I support Councilman Barlow's position. I want to make sure that the motion doesn't preclude Councilman Barlow from getting what he wants. I only asked for what I wanted because I thought it would serve my purpose as well as Councilman Barlow's. In other words, I'm not asking for a new position, but rather to work with the old one exclusively. So, you know, just if that motion will take care of that, I would be happy. And also, I have the justification for this whole discussion right here. And be happy to make that available to the public right away.
Thank you. Councilman Beers?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would offer a couple of points of observation on the data that Councilman Coffin has brought forth. You need to be careful in dealing with data. It turns out that almost 1,000 of the 11,000 plus in Ward 3 are requests for key and lock adjustments in the city jail. This is the system that work orders are placed in and dealt with by staff. And so there's two pieces of thought that I have regarding the data. First is we need to understand what those requests are. Some of them are, in fact, repetitive, small tasks handled by staff. And two is, even with larger tasks, let's not forget that these are handled by staff. These are not handled by the 7 policymakers. Our role in the city is to set policy so that the city manager and the city staff can execute the operations of the city. And so that's what they do. They probably do so disparately between between wards 1, 3, and 5 and wards 2, 4, and 6 for many reasons, not the least of which is most of the city's infrastructure has been built over 100 years' time and exists physically in wards 1, 3, and 5. Whereas Ward 2, for example, was bunny rabbits and tortoises well beyond the edge of town when I was in high school. And so we need to keep in mind that while these service calls do have significant and noticeable variances between our wards and the geography that we've drawn on the maps, our city staff responds accordingly and gets the job done. And that's why we see when the city manager's office does its annual survey of our citizens, we do a pretty good job compared to other cities. And so I think we should keep that in mind as well. I support the motion as the mayor
Mayor?
has made it.
Yes, please.
Hi, Mayor, I just wanted to say thanks to Councilman Beers. And yes, I bet you it's true that you will find oddities like that in these budgets, just as you will find them in every ward where it's simply a call for service by a city agency to another city agency. So when it started 2 years ago, the work that I did, that my staff did for me, are you kidding? Let's not take credit here. They came up with the same ratios just looking at the Hansen reports. And they also combined that with the first, I don't know, 25 or 30 agendas that we had. No, we've got 50 agendas because we've had, I've had about 100 agendas now since I started serving. So they took a look at the work by agenda and also, so that was pretty objective. And then Hansen requests, which are not employees calling other employees to do chores within the city, and it showed the same ratios, so the activities don't change. That's available too. I've still got that, but I don't think I have it in this file. But it just shows you that no matter what you include, 1, 3, and 5 are short. Now, Councilman Barlow says he can't support the motion because it doesn't give him what he needs. So, and because I didn't quite hear the whole motion, I'd like to hear it
The
restated.
motion was just take the budget as it is and not do anything with these 3 additions.
Mayor,
What I'm
Mayor-
going to ask is for Councilman, the Mayor Pro Tem, please to restate the motion because I lost it myself.
Yeah, give me an opportunity, maybe I can address some of these things. It's, none of us are denying that perhaps 1 and 3 and 5 need additional help, and I think option 1 is certainly worthy of an effort to try. Let me make the motion again with a little added wordage. I would move to adopt fiscal year 2016 City of Las Vegas final budget, including the 5-year capital improvement plan, which also will adopt option 1 to see how that works with the full knowledge that we may have to come back and augment the budget in case there are new hires other than the ones already in the budget. That's my motion.
Okay.
Mayor-
Okay, so I'm going to call for the question on that. Let's go ahead now. You've heard the motion, so,
Could I just say a few words, Mayor?
yes.
I just would like to say that what Ricky's saying about the burning out of his staff, we are hitting the same situation in ours. I try to explain a party house problem, and people can say, oh, that's business, let it go on, and so forth and so on. I have spent weeks and months and hundreds of hours, as has every member of my staff. We have the same problem with infrastructure falling apart. Staff does not keep up with it. They can't keep up with it. We turn in all of these code violations of things. They're not kept up with, at least not the way the people want it to be kept up with. I just wanted to point that out. I was surprised, quite honestly, when Betsy said, you know what, 2 and 4 and 6 are willing to let you have these extra people because they understand the problem. Because I thought, isn't that wonderful? We're all working together and understanding because we are so different. There is going to come a time when the things are going to burst in Ward 6 or Ward 4 or Ward 2, and then they're going to need extra help with the types of things they need with. So I just wanted to emphasize again the importance of these people.
And yes.
Mayor, if I may, I know you called for the question, but let me just remind everybody, we have been working slowly through a restoration, slowly. We're still down 21% in non-public safety positions. So we've become masters at trying to reprogram resources that we have now to try and plug the gaps. there are a couple of, and Councilman Coffin brought this up, there are a couple of points in the next several months that might help us address this issue. One, if you go with the budget the way that it's currently proposed, we work with the neighborhood planners, try and work out the workload assessment and all those things over the next couple of months, we'll see if we can meet the needs. If we can't meet the needs, then what we can do is we begin to close the books, Vanetta's made an estimate of how we're going to close the books right now. But we could easily come back in October, if we're unable to work it out with the neighborhood planners to get the schedules that you need, with the union, et cetera, to meet your needs. We could easily at that time have a much better sense of how we finish this year, because we will have closed books. Two, we will have 3 or 4 months worth of revenue, actual revenue in this year. And then we could bring back option 2 at that point, should we find that that's the right need. Then you're not making the decision today, you're kind of punting. We try and redeploy the staff we've got now, and then you have an option to come back in October when we close the books on the current year. That is just a suggestion that may help a little bit for Councilman Barlow. It may not be good enough. The other thing you could do is you could authorize the 3 positions in this budget and freeze them immediately until we finish the workload analysis and figure out what to do with the neighborhood planners. So there's 2 different options there that you could do that have virtually no impact on the budget.
Let's handle the motion on the floor, and let's vote on it, because either it will move forward and discussion. So your motion, one more time, clearly.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. I would move to adopt fiscal year 2016 City of Las Vegas final budget, including the 5-year capital improvement plan, with option 1 today, with the full knowledge that we may be coming back to augment that, this budget should additional staff be needed. That's my motion.
And that's your motion. All right, there's a motion. Let's vote, please. No more of that. We've had enough discussion. Thank you. Please vote, and please post. Motion carries.
And on agenda item 6, Mayor,
And on agenda item 6,
I would move to adopt fiscal year 2016 City of Las Vegas Redevelopment Agency's final budget as presented.
thank you. There's a motion. Please vote, and please post. Motion carries. Okay, agenda item 7. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. And you'll just, in the back of your brains, keep that information alive. Thank you very much. Agenda item 7, citizen participation. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters within the jurisdiction of the City Council and Redevelopment Agency. No subject may be acted upon by the City Council and Redevelopment Agency unless that subject is on the agenda scheduled for action. If you wish to be heard, come to the podium, please. Give your name for the record. The amount of discussion on any single subject, as well as the amount of time any single speaker is allowed, may be limited. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak under this portion of the budget, of the agenda? Hearing none, this special joint City Council and Redevelopment Agency meeting is adjourned. Thank